It could have been the battery or memory.
I have here a September 16th report which states that the memory was full prior to the July 30th meeting.
I don't know about that.
The report also includes that the device had a timestamp of December 30th, 1899.
Yes.
And that is consistent with someone pulling the battery out.
There could be other reasons for that.
It is consistent with someone pulling the battery out.
Object. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
You also participated in the August 19th meeting, the first face-to-face with Hussein.
Yes.
After the meeting, Hussein left his recorder on.
Yes.
You were excited.
Yes.
You stated that the director of the FBI would also be excited.
I don't recall.
You used sexual language to describe your excitement.
I don't recall.
You said, Robert F.N. Mueller III is gonna get a Woody.
That could refer to a station wagon.
F.N. are not his middle initials.
I just learned that last week.
No more questions.
The government then calls a series of expert witnesses and rests.
Defense calls Elmi Mahad. You were not born in this country.
I came here as a refugee in 1993 because of the civil wars back home. They were killing everyone with a university degree. I had to leave my wife and infant son behind for 1 year. They were malnourished when they arrived. I was so grateful to America.
What were your son's interests as a child?
He liked sports, especially the NBA. He had an identity crisis as a teenager.
Did your family travel to London?
Yes, there was a funeral for my uncle and we all went over. My son was singled out at the airport because of his name.
Your son liked to read and write?
Yes, he is a good writer. He won a poetry contest in the 10th grade.
In August of 2009, you were concerned that your son might leave the country.
My wife and I had split up. My son called me at work to say he was going to leave the country, that he had his passport. I called my wife and she couldn't find his passport. I tried calling my son back and I couldn't get a hold of him. I heard of Somali kids from Minneapolis going back and getting killed. We needed help. We panicked. I called the FBI. They wanted to meet. So I invited him to my wife's house. A few hours later, she found my son, and he didn't have a ticket or a visa. I called the FBI back to say everything was okay, but still they wanted to meet. When they showed up, they said they were from the Portland JTTF. I told them, why JTTF? And I love America, and God bless America. I'm so grateful to America. Why JTTF? Why JTTF? Portland, why JTTF?
Did the FBI mention their concerns about your son's contact with extremists?
No. We have counselors at our mosque, which is more like our community center. They could have helped. They could have taught him right and wrong.
Your next contact with the FBI was at Portland Airport when you learned that your son was on the no-fly list?
Yes.
And then after he was arrested?
Yes.
Were you aware that he was using drugs?
Oh, my son was the simplest person I met. He is so good-hearted, easygoing, down to earth. Everyone used to tell their kids, be more like him. He always did what he was told. I love him more than anything on earth.
No more questions.
Mr. Bishop?
Your love for your son made you go to the FBI?
I thought they would help.
You were concerned that your son was brainwashed?
The FBI brainwashed my son!
At the time, you were concerned he was brainwashed.
I didn't say that. I said the kids from Minneapolis were brainwashed.
No more questions.
The defense calls a series of character and expert witnesses and rests. January 30th started with the judge's instructions to the jury.
The government must prove on November 26th the defendant knowingly attempted to use a weapon of mass destruction in the United States, that the defendant used the mail system to further this attempt, that the defendant took a substantial step in the crime. It would have happened unless the FBI intervened, and that the defendant was not entrapped. Concerning entrapment, the government must prove that the defendant was either predisposed to commit such a crime or that the government did not unduly induce him to commit the crime. It is not entrapment if the government merely gave the defendant the opportunity to commit the crime. Mr. Bishop?
This is about a choice made by the defendant to kill thousands of Americans. This decision was made long before the government became involved. His substantial step was dialing the phone. It is impossible to entrap someone to dial a phone. And when it didn't work the first time, he dialed it a second time, determined to kill thousands of Americans. The law defines entrapment as a two-step process. It is not entrapment if he was predisposed, and if he was, or if he was not, unduly induced. We are not claiming that the defendant would have committed this exact crime, but a similar deadly act. You've heard evidence that starting in December of 2008, the defendant was active on internet forums and chat rooms. He wrote about eliminating the infidels. In early 2009, he began communication with Samir Khan and Amro al-Ali, two terrorists since killed by U.S. drone strikes. He wrote 4 articles for Jihad Recollections, demonstrating his deep and long-standing commitment to violent principles.
And he shows images of the Twin Towers in flames and a grinning bin Laden from the zine.
Then the defendant's own father calls the FBI about his son wanting to wage war against America. Tragically, the defendant's parents already knew what it would take the FBI a year to find out. Within minutes of meeting the undercover operative Youssef, the defendant said that he wanted to wage war on the West. The undercover agents continually gave him ways to get out, and tragically, his mind was made up. At the August 19th first meeting with Agent Hussein, we learned that the defendant's desire to make war in the West was based on his long-standing ideology. He had been thinking about killing Americans since he was 15. That's all you need to know about predisposition. By September 7th, the defendant completed several tasks, including purchasing bomb parts and getting a fake passport. These tasks were designed to make it real, to give him a chance to stop. He never showed any reluctance. The November 4th test bomb was another attempt to make it real, to give the defendant a wake-up call, and he didn't shy away at all. His mind was made up to carry out violent jihad in America. On the morning of November 26, the defendant was at peace with his plan. The agents took him to view the van as a last effort to get him to stop.
He shows the image of Hussein and the defendant looking in the side of the van, this time with the back of the van cut away to show the blue barrels inside.
Tragically, he wouldn't stop. He dialed the phone, and when he tried it a second time, he was arrested. It is impossible to entrap someone for this crime. You must return a guilty verdict.
Ms. Monet?
This case is a tragedy. A tragedy for the city of Portland, for the defendant's parents, and for the defendant himself.